Alrighty, well, hello friends. RebelKitty here. I'm here to talk to you today about flex state. Just kidding. Uh, in all seriousness, what I plan to talk to you about today, why I am boot LARPing in my room for you this evening, is to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, as many might know, and that would be not dying. Well, specifically ballistic armor and plate carriers. Sort of an introduction or a primer, if you will, on this whole subject. Many might see a lot of this kind of content as sort of a review, but I'm gonna cover the whole subject here in depth, and we'll see if we find anything new for you. So, yes, welcome along. I brought with me some of my plate carriers, ones that I have used, ones that you have seen me use, and let's figure out why would anyone need this? Why would anyone, for any conceivable reason, want to run around in the desert or what have you with metal or heavy plates to them strapped in some way? Well, the answer is simple. Again, not dying. This is almost every bit as important, if not more important, than your weapon system, whatever that is. For life, in general, you want to avoid getting blown up, hit by projectiles, and otherwise maimed. So I feel like body armor is a tremendous thing for this, and has been tested throughout history. So starting, obviously, probably our furthest forms of armor were your leather and hides, but we got into, obviously, your armor was developed to match the weapons, or sort of, that you were encountering. So over time, as people got sharp, pointy blade things, we got hard, steely armor that was hard enough to repel the blades. In some cases, that didn't always work, because then people used arrows a whole lot. And in the case of some places, like in Asia, they started using sophisticated things like plate mail or like layered mail that actually allowed for some resistance to arrows. But over time, people slowly adapted to the things that were trying to kill them. Very smart. It's kind of why we're here. So eventually we got to the old gunpowder age, and things were kind of slow at first, in the sense that kind of early, if any armor existed at the time, was mostly just relegated to steeled plates and trying to basically be harder than the object hitting you, which sounds really good on paper. But obviously, as one might be able to visualize, even if you're wearing some kind of heavy armor system and you get hit with a super fast, supersonic ballistic projectile, you are not going to be... you're still going to feel it. It's going to be traumatic. So the thing is, with the gunpowder, and the faster cartridges got and the more powerful they got, well, hard armor didn't necessarily work, so we were kind of stuck for a little bit. World War II, even, you saw the use of like steel helmets, steel plates, and things like this, like trying our darndest to, again, not die. And it did have some effect, at least as far as mitigating things like shrapnel from grenades and artillery, which was all very lethal at the time. So certainly better than having nothing. But we hadn't quite managed to find some sort of conclusive answer to the bullet problem. And then, later into the 20th century, we started figuring out composite and synthetic materials might be the way to go about this. And rather than trying to be just simply harder than the bullet that is being, striking, maybe absorbing the bullet or breaking it up and mitigating its force in such a way that, again, it's effectively bulletproof. So that brings us to the idea of ballistic armor. So as opposed to, stab proof and flak armor, ballistic armor would specifically be, at least my little cursory definition, would be like any material or object designed to mitigate, reduce, or eliminate damage and impact force from a projectile. So that doesn't exactly mean bullets entirely. It could be shrapnel as well. It could be, I guess, cannonballs and things of this nature, metal objects flying at you. So ballistic armor was made out of a variety of materials. While most people obviously have in their mind there are steel ballistic plates, there are some special accommodations. So there's some special considerations for why that would work against a bullet. But for the most part, we see materials like nylon, aramid, polyurethane. I know I screwed that up, but we have a variety of synthetic materials, sort of like that oobleck. Oobleck from old school. But like that kind of material that resists impacts incredibly well. And while it isn't necessarily materially hard, it does have a way of slowing and catching the bullet and reducing damage. And so your ballistic plates come in a variety of levels. They're numerically rated from 1 to currently 4 being the highest. I don't know if there's like any reason to any change to that or if there's more but as far as I'm aware, the NIJ only certifies up to 4. And in between there, you also have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2A and 3A. The A is typically referring to soft or flexible armors. So your 2, 3, and 4 are going to be more of your traditional, it's formed like a plate. That's kind of, a solid object. Whereas your 3A and 2A, these are going to be more like your like flexible vests and even like clothes that are bulletproof and things like this. So those are 3A. These are all both tested and or certified, hopefully, if you're doing your research, to be bulletproof to that certain standard set by the National Institute of Justice. And this standard is very useful as beneficial to you as a consumer, as a reference, because for all you know, if you're trying to put your life in the hands of this material, if you're wearing this to protect yourself, you are certainly hoping that it does what it says it does. And standards and materials are going to vary between all kinds of companies and how exactly they solve that problem, but at least there is some uniform way of meeting that standard or not. Where things get a little dicey here, however, is some companies simply test their plates and armor to a certain, they might test up to NIJ 3. Well, even if it passes and they get a signed off, from a lab saying, yay, they passed up to this standard, that is good and all, but it's not the same thing as being certified through the National Institute of Justice. So I'll try to include a link here, but one thing when I was looking for ballistic armor, and I think it's just a valuable research tool, is the NIJ website itself actually lists the current and past companies and their certifications for different levels and different specific models of armor. So this is extremely helpful as a reference for you, because then say, oh, I'm kind of looking at these HESCO plates. What are these? And so you search up HESCO up on this NIJ site, and you see that, oh, well, these, these may or may not have certifications for this certain level that I want. And so that may or may not influence your decision. And in a good way. You're making far more informed and up-to-date decisions. Because sometimes, yes, over time, these companies either fail a test, or it's found certain lots were faulty and didn't meet the standard. Various reasons play into why a company might over time not maintain their certs. What I typically look for when I'm trying to determine if a company and a specific type of armor is reputable or not, and what I did for mine, I looked up the company itself. I tried to see, do they have several active certifications? Do they have active certifications for the specific plate model that I want? And then, like, what's the status of their other plates? Are they keeping things up? How does everything look? Well, it turns out, so the company I ended up going with was LTC. Something technology. Yeah, sorry, I'll put the name up. But LTC, as it turns out, was indeed maintaining active certs for level 4 ballistic armor, and specifically their ceramic plate. So I had those in my area locally, and I was like, hell yeah. These have an active certification, so I know at least are good for some period of time. Not only is there a warranty often provided by the manufacturer in some way, but then I at least can rest assured knowing that at least to the government standard, as good as that can be, at least I know that it will deflect rifle-rated bullets reasonably. So that brings us to materials. The different materials that these ballistic plates and armor are typically made out of. So I think the two main ones I'm going to focus on here that are typically going to be what people are debating and discussing, and I think are most relevant, is steel and ceramic. Ceramic composite, maybe a better term. So a lot of folks out there, definitely they're polarized on the subject of, should I get steel plates or should I get ceramic plates? A lot of people outright would tell you, oh my god, get ceramic plates, you're so stupid, because why would you're just gonna die. But I feel like there is some argument to be made for steel plates. So let's get into maybe why. So I, for a time, used steel plates. Let's see, we have them right here. Tactical Scorpion rated 3 rifle plates. Certainly not the fanciest thing in the world. You can see here they have, it's not just a raw steel plate. It has kind of like a coating around it. And yeah, these are certainly a bit hefty. But they were super cheap. And they came bundled with this Tactical Scorpion plate carrier. So, and if you notice here, it even had little side plate pouches, and it came with side plates. So it had a full armor set, and a plate carrier, and it was like, I want to say it was like $250 or something. It was some like $200 or some crazy cheap amount. And I kind of knew going into it that, like, this thing is not Gucci. This is not the greatest thing ever made. But I wanted to at least try out plate carriers to see if the physical strain was was really worth it. If I was just gonna, just wreck my body, and I was just gonna hate the experience the whole time. Was the cost really worth it? Did I feel like, I really needed these things? All kinds of stuff going through my head. I was just like, I don't know. The investment sometimes to get rated 4 plates in a decent plate carrier can be almost like up to like $800, $1,000. And so you're sitting there thinking like, I don't know. So I went with something kind of cheap to start with to see if this was something I could reasonably tolerate, or maybe I just get a chest rig and go with that. Well, it turns out I kind of liked this thing. It had some faults, but as someone who had never really used like full armor plate carrier with side plates and everything before, that was like a new experience for me, training and trying to do that, and I honestly kind of an enjoyable one. It was heavy, I will say that, certainly with all my magazines and all my everything. But I feel like that's kind of one of the points in training, is to sort of train with adverse conditions. You want to train with weight, extra weight. You want to train being, with unable to use your right hand or some, like there's various things you can do during your regular drilling and exercise that might actually be more beneficial to you. So I thought it was a very valuable exercise to at least do. And on the note of it being safe or not, because a lot of people would argue, well, does it, the weight or whatever, but that's an expensive way to get yourself killed. Because, yes, so the way steel is deflecting a bullet, what makes steel armor bulletproof, is it is effectively harder than the bullet. So when the bullet strikes, what a bullet does when it strikes a surface it can't penetrate is that it will actually travel parallel to the surface angle that it struck. It's kind of crazy, but so duly noted. But that means that if a bullet strikes you, say, coming directly up into your plate, it will just bounce straight up from that plate into your throat and you're dead. Obviously, kind of like that's a really extreme visual example, but the idea is basically it's not necessarily stopping the bullet, it's breaking it into fragments and then sending them in another direction, which, mind you, say you're holding your gun, you get hit here, there's a lot of potential areas where that bullet now is going to possibly hit. But this is where I noted that these aren't just bare steel plates either. A lot of times what is steel body armor, especially depending on the company, the nicer that they are, they will have build-up coating, and they may even have extra coating. And if they allow you to pay for extra coating, by all means, I think that's you can't beat that. But what that coating actually does is it is trying to catch the bullet fragments. So once the bullet has already penetrated our plate, our strike face here, and has hit the hard surface inside, it starts breaking up into fragments. It's trying to fly out this way. They get caught by this almost like it's like a rubbery sort of, it expands and it catches the fragments. It's kind of almost like a bag or something kind of that fits it. Rhino lining. So when it gets hit, it gets absorbed and caught into this material. Doesn't always work. It might fail after a few hits. This and that, blah, blah, blah. But generally speaking, it does work. The principle is there. Additionally, what I did as a steel plate user, I had this, I invested in the Tactical Scorpion's little spall bags. So these things here are made out of, I think it's like 1000D Cordura. So Cordura is another one of these synthetic fibers that gets used in a lot of ballistic and tactical gear. But it's kind of this heavy... It's a heavy bag that you would slip the plate into. And what happens is this gives like an even added layer if the plate gets hit by a bullet to sort of catch that material. And I've seen testing of both of these and even tactical scorpions, and it's like they at least depending on which one you have, certainly can sustain multiple rifle hits. And this bag will catch, these will mitigate the spalling. Contrast this, however, what most people are going to tell you to get, and what I currently have, and what I highly recommend by all means with people with a budget to afford it, is ceramic plates. There is a lot of benefits to ceramic composite material. So I say composite because it's not just like a, like your mom's dishware or something. It's ceramic, usually ceramics infused with other materials. Could be silicon alumina, I think is like a common one. And there's a few others, but the idea essentially is you are minimizing weight as much as possible while maximizing the stopping the ability to stop bullets, which is kind of awesome if you think about it. So the way steel armor works is you have to add weight essentially in order for it to stop a bullet more. Excuse my technical language, but yeah. So you have to make the plate either harder or add more to the plate in some way. Whereas the way composite armor works is you're not necessarily. The idea is it's it might even break by design in order to better catch and absorb the bullet. Because what's happening, in a ceramic plate, obviously it is not harder than the bullet in this case, unlike a steel plate. It will indeed crack, and it will start to break into pieces. But the thing is, by breaking into pieces, it's sort of taking a bullet's impact, which is a single super tiny point, and spreading that impact point out across a much broader area, which simultaneously slows the bullet down. A bullet doesn't penetrate through, it'll get caught somewhere in between, or it might break material on the other side of the plate, but in any case, the bullet fragments are essentially caught within the plate itself. Oh, look, there's a waifu. One thing I think people overlook or don't exactly realize is, even with ceramic plates, that yes, there are bullet fragments still, and fragments of the armor itself getting ejected from the impact. The difference is, however, that ceramic plates are typically coated in already some sort of, just like this, some sort of either cordura, aramid, or synthetic fiber. And what that fiber does is it essentially acts like a giant bag or net and catches that sort of ejected material. So really nothing ever goes anywhere. So I would say that, by all means, this whole setup, it's like, well, look at what it takes to match a fraction of our power. Like, it's certainly a similar kind of situation to that, where it takes quite a bit to make spall proof and ballistic protection with steel plates, but it is possible, and it is somewhat reasonably priced. So I'm going to say it before we just trash on everybody who does that. I'm like, it's some of these plates, the way they work is they're not necessarily, they have their purposes, and to each their own. And as long as at least someone has something, I'm better off having something than nothing at this point. Is kind of where I've come to. Moving on, I think we could discuss the armor systems themselves. So, typically, the way you wear your ballistic armor, there's multiple ways. The U.S. Army currently has what's called the, integrated outer tactical vest or some kind of thing like that. But it's essentially their all-encompassing body armor system, made of modular pieces that you can sort of attach or detach according to your mission and whatever you need to do, and makes it multifunctional. Probably one of the core elements to ballistic armor is going to be your helmet. Typically these come in either like your bump helmets that are not ballistic helmets. They're just kind of like impact, I bumped my head helmets. But there are proper ballistic helmets. Like here we have a 3A Ops Core helmet. And there are typically your helmets, your ballistic helmets are going to range from the 2A to 3A. I don't think there is really a truly rated for rifle helmet. Like the Russians claim this and stuff, but it's like, even if it was able to mitigate the damage of a bullet that powerful, I feel like just given the impact site, you're still going to be in poor health. And these 3A helmets, honestly, are pretty capable of quite a bit. So it's better than having nothing for sure on your dome. And you can see it's one of these high cut ones. Not all this is sort of like a newer thing. Most folks might be more familiar with like the over ear helmet cut designs. This is more for like added, with your hearing protection. So here you go. It's like you start with your helmets typically. I'd say that's usually probably as far as immediate personal safety, probably one of the first things you should try to get. I notice all the time at the range, I shoot in an uncontrolled range, and I've seen before stray rounds and this and that land uncomfortably close to where I am. So at least having the helmet, I'll put that on and I'm like, at least I am somewhat comforted by this. It's better than having nothing. Then you probably the next thing people imagine as far as what ballistic armor would be is going to be your plate carrier, like I showed earlier. So these are typically composed of like little shoulder straps, and then your plate bags that you put your plates in. This one has little side plate bags, which not all of them do. You'll see here I have like this condor plate carrier. This is probably a really common. A lot of folks, or you see a lot of these floating around. A lot of folks like these. Relatively inexpensive, but it's got the 2 plate bags and just sort of the straps on the side, but no plate bags there. So really simplistic design, but this is probably going to be like your most common that you see folks running around with. Straps are important, as well as typically they have like a carry handle here in the back, like some way of pulling the person should they be injured, or you just need to pick up your dang armor. So there's they range from the super simplistic to the a little more sophisticated. I would say this is really reminiscent of Gulf War, early Gulf War era kind of vests, I feel like. It really wasn't terrible. I wish the sides didn't Velcro. Like, I wish they just snapped and they weren't Velcro. But, because, like, when you're running around, you can kind of hear the Velcro-y sound. It's like, eh. But for the price, again, I was, like, super thrilled with what I got. Whereas this is more of, like, a modern plate carrier design here. Let's move our microphone a little bit. So here, it might even be kind of hard to see because I have my admin pouch here on the front, my magazines, but you'll notice like on these shoulders here we have different buckles. These are just, you just pull a string and they pull right off. These also have side armor bags, which similar kind of buckle structure, like it just pulls off with one thing rather than it being Velcro that you tear off and on, like it's just plastic tabs. So real big fan of that. It's got like the carry handle and all. Overall gonna like similar in structure to that, but a little higher quality materials and not IR reflective. So this is the Ace Link Quad Release 2.0. And I've added here little deltoid protector armor, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But this would be like the core plate carrier. Then, moving on from that, like I mentioned here, you can also add like deltoid armor, so protecting your arms. There's thigh protectors, inner thigh protectors, groin protectors, belly flaps, collarbone protectors. It gets pretty elaborate. And typically the way this is applied in the military is this all depends on your specific given mission. So for example, like the inner thigh armor and groin armor and all that is going to be particularly useful for your mine defusal folks. People dealing with explosive ordnance in some way where it might blow up and, it's like they're dealing with IEDs at foot level. It might blow up at, crotch or groin level. Then deltoids are typically used by vehicle gunner folks in stationary gun positions, and or CQB situations, so police, law enforcement units using kind of deltoids armor for that. And I figure it's like if I, heaven forbid, ever stuck in like a shit fuck trench, then at least I'd rather have that than nothing. And so you have these added pieces. By all means, a lot of folks consider that really LARPy. I get a lot of crap for that, but I just love. They kind of grew on me. I started it as just a test to see if I even kind of liked it, and I was like, you know what, this is okay. These are really not that bad. I honestly, I feel better having them than not. So it's like, it's to each their own though. It's like it's all it takes is what you're willing to put practice time with, and what isn't like unbearably uncomfortable, and what hopefully is actually comfortable for you is what you should be doing. So it's like, be mindful. It's like, don't try to overburden your body and destroy your joints and maim yourself. It's pretty common in, for military folks later that they have all kinds of joint issues and compressed discs and crap from wearing their armor. So by all means, if you're going to do it, try to do it right and try to minimize the wear and strain to your body. But mind you, here I am. But I have, I've done many things and set this whole thing up in such a way to try to reduce as much weight on my shoulders, immediate shoulders, as I can. And it's quite actually quite comfy. I've fallen asleep in that thing a few times. So it's like, it's not bad. To each their own, though. It's like you gotta, whatever you have in mind that is going to be the most relevant and important to you is going to be what you adapt. But just remember that there are other things that are bulletproof just besides your helmet and your plate carrier. And with that, I figured I discussed those in different armor systems. I think that we covered different materials. We covered what ceramic versus steel. Why, one is better than the other or not. I think they're both fairly equal, but ceramic for weight's sake. And just the quality of the manufacturers for rated 4 plates, like LTC and such, there's some really good ones. So by all means, I highly recommend that kind of stuff. We discussed looking into NIJ, the ballistic rating system, the different levels, and how the National Institute of Justice either certifies companies to do that, or certain companies try to test to those standards, and how that might be different. And why you might check the NIJ's website for your next ballistic armor purchase, because that's some helpful information to know. It's like, at least some of these companies are being sussy on you, and you'll see these plates on clearance, and you're like, oh, that's looking like a really good deal there. And then you go to the NIJ site, and it's like, oh, they've been revoked like 5 times. Holy, it's like that must be a plague. Like, there's a reason why they're on clearance sometimes. Not always, but be mindful. Just try to make informed and educated purchases. So that, I think that kind of takes me to the end of my little soapbox there on ballistic armor and plate carriers. It was really cursory. You could go super deep into pretty much any one of the singular things that I talked about, and people do. But I hope this was a good, broad overview for folks, and especially folks that are kind of have no idea what the hell any of this is. I'm we're here for you. If you have any questions, by all means, shoot me something. Comment it or whatever. It's I try to be pretty reasonably helpful about information. So, I've never been shot at, so take that all with a grain of salt. I'm not a combat person thing. I've never been in this situation. I try to avoid it. So, take that as you will, but I do train a lot with these things, and I do take the subject seriously and with a great level of interest. I don't know, I have done a gross amount of research on the subject and find it super fascinating. So, if you have anything you want to shoot me, any feedback or suggestions, go ahead. We're all fam. And yeah, you have thanks for hanging out. Y'all have a good one. Bye.